And a big focus this evening, Air India's latest diktat for passengers. You need to check in at least 75 minutes before your flight departure. What does it really mean for passengers? Is it more passenger torture, or is it much needed caution given the fact that airports are witnessing major chaos, particularly during the festive season? Now, this diktat is for international flights, but who knows, it could be extended to domestic flights as well. I'm being joined by Sanjay Lazar, who's an aviation expert. But Sanjay, before I come to you, in fact, Brigadier Sanjay is joining us from Greater Noida. Yes, Brigadier, go ahead and tell us what you think of Air India's latest diktat.
Yeah, it's very surprising to know. You know, already we had been traveling earlier. It used to take us 2 hours to reach the airport and then 2.5 hours there. So for a flight of, say, from Delhi to Mumbai of 2.5 hours, we would be traveling before that itself for a good about 1.5 to 2 hours. So it doesn't make any sense. Though, yes, I do agree that the airlines may have some point of view to that. But then these timings should be fixed by the DGCA. Otherwise, each airline would have their own timings, you know, and the customers will face a lot of confusion and there'll be utter chaos at the airports. So it is mandatory that not one single airline should fix a timing that at what time the check-in would take place, but across the board, either they do it across the board or should not permit any single airline to do so.
That point makes a lot of sense. And Brigadier, do you think that this is ultimately more harassment when it comes to passengers? We already have soaring fares and long waits, long hauls at the airport, and now this big deadline that you have to reach 75 minutes before the departure time. So more, in a sense, more harassment for the passengers.
Absolutely. It doesn't make any sense that if 2 hours couldn't help earlier, how do you think that 2.5 hours would help in any manner? Because that much of rush would be there at the airport as the people would reach earlier and there would be utter chaos there.
All right, Brigadier Sanjay, thanks very much for joining us with your views. Mr. Punya Singh is also joining us from Jaipur, I believe. Yes, Mr. Singh, tell us what you think about this latest revision of rules. You have to reach 75 minutes before your check-in, before your departure time. What do you think of this?
Yeah, sir, I strongly back Air India's decision because if commuters check in early, it will be smooth for them and for the staff of Air India, and the chances of chaos will be less.
Okay, so pretty impassioned there. You believe that this is a move that is rightful given the fact that we see a lot of chaos at airports. Sanjay Lazar, come in on this. So two contradicting views there. But what Brigadier Sanjay said about the DGCA, the aviation regulator, looking at these guidelines and not airlines perhaps having the autonomy to decide when passengers should reach the airport. That point made a lot of sense because many a times you book a ticket not necessarily looking at which airline is this and looking at their individual guidelines, but simply availability or which airline costs which airline is more reasonable. So given all of that, isn't it more sensible that the aviation regulator makes these guidelines instead of airlines individually looking at them?
Good evening. Thank you, Vedant. First of all, I don't agree with Brigadier Sanjay's views. For the simple reason is if you go back in the last 2 months, you've seen mammoth queues at Terminal 3, domestic and international. You know, that terminal itself has a capacity of 40-odd million passengers. It's gone past 45 million. We are witnessing record growth. Now, you have to understand what Air India has said. And I think you all have got it wrong. Air India says that the counters will close 75 minutes early.
Yes.
It was earlier 60, they've made it 75 minutes. This is purely for international flights.
Yes.
Let's understand why that 15 minutes is added on. Because they see chaos at the departure because of immigration and customs and security. Now, if you open the GMR website, Terminal 3, just now, I'm on the website while I'm talking to you, it's showing me live images. It's taking 7 minutes to get it, 2 minutes to get into the airport. 7 minutes to get into the check-in counter, A to F or G to M. Okay, you add that's 9 minutes. You add security of international is 15 minutes for first business and economy. So you're already down to 22 minutes. You add departure immigration, another 15 minutes. My friend, you've already crossed 30 minutes here. Now, if you're going to now also remember, Air India is the largest international operator out of Terminal 3. A lot of international airlines, excuse me, bunch up their flights at the night when all Air India's ultra long haul and long haul flights depart. So you've got a congregation of people at the similar time, I'd say around 11 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. You've got hundreds and thousands, 100,000 passengers leaving literally.
Okay, so that's an important point you're making, that perhaps, this decision...
I've already shown you 30 minutes is the additional time to clear through.
Yes, and so this decision to close the check-in counters... This decision to close the check-in... Hear me out, Mr. Lazar. The decision to close the check-in counters 75 minutes before the departure time, you are saying that this is essentially to streamline, the entire process. And this would, in a sense, not have much impact when it comes to passengers.
You haven't got it. Sorry, Vedant. It's not to streamline. It is to make up for inadequacies of GMR, BCAS, CISF and the government. Immigration is a government subject and the Ministry of Civil Aviation. The GMR looks after the airport. They've got 95, I've just done, because you called me on, I looked into the details. And how can you blame one airline? For Brigadier Sanjay to say DGCA should mandate equally. British Airways has 2 flights a night. Air India has 18 flights. Can you mandate a time? They still have the same amount of counters. We need to understand the logic here. Okay, you've got about 95 immigration and security counters. That's not enough. Have we expanded capacity? No, we've not. I was there day before yesterday. My kids went to Canada. It was a nightmare for them to clear immigration and for me to clear security. So I
understand, but see, everybody is entitled to their opinion. I mean, what Brigadier Sanjay said, he is entitled to his opinion. But the fact here is, Mr. Lazar, that ultimately the sense is that it's the passenger paying for everything. As you rightly pointed out, that perhaps it's the inadequacies of the GMR, of airport authorities, but ultimately it's the passenger paying. The sense is that you're already paying so much that you have to be there, and then there's this deadline as well, sort of like a sword dangling over your head. But Mukesh Kumar from Bengaluru is joining us. Yes, Mr. Mukesh, go ahead and tell us your views on this.
Yeah, see, Air India has taken this, Tata Group has taken this Air India at almost a throwaway price. And after 2-3 years, the so-called Tata great name, nothing great is happening with Air India itself, because they've always been capitalizing on getting these kind of deals, and more than that, they are not bothered to improve the quality of services and all that, and it's running exactly the same way the government was running it for several decades. So what good is it that Tatas have taken over? And now with Vistara being clubbed with Air India, even the so-called good service of Vistara is going to get dented with Air India's bad service.
So that's an important point you're making. It's not just about one particular, diktat, but it's also about what services they are providing. While, of course, passengers may be willing to comply with all the guidelines being put out by airlines, but you are saying that the services continue to deteriorate when it comes to Air India.
Exactly. And where is the Tata Group? I'm very sorry to say that Tatas are only capitalizing on their brand image, but if you look at several of their products and services, not just Air India, it has, over the years, it has deteriorated very drastically.
All right. Thanks very much, Mukesh Kumar, for joining us. We have more callers joining us. And just, for the clarity of our viewers, this new diktat basically says that the check-in counters will close 75 minutes before the departure time. Earlier, that was 60 minutes before the departure time. But Devesh Agarwal from Bengaluru is also joining us. Yes, Mr. Devesh, what do you think about this latest diktat?
Hi, Vedant and Sanjay. Congrats on the show. I wanted to double check with you. This 75 minutes will apply to all passengers including those who are only carrying hand baggage, or is this only for those who will be checking in baggage? I feel, in my humble opinion, 75 minutes for the business passenger who's only typically carrying, hand baggage is a bit too long. It might land up hurting Air India in terms of its because business people want to maximize their time on the ground. They don't want to be checking in so far in advance. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you so much.
I have an aviation expert. Mr. Lazar, did you hear, Devesh out? What is your opinion on that?
First of all, hi Devesh. And so I'd like to clarify. What the order says is very clearly it's only applicable for international flights.
Yes.
It is also about closure of counters, right? And, so yes, to answer his question in a simple, from what I understood, it would close 75 minutes in advance in any case for all categories of passengers. Be that as it may, business and first class had a carte blanche to walk in almost any time to check in. As Devesh would know, he's a very frequent business class and first class traveler. So, and this is only limited to Delhi. Delhi International at Terminal 3 and no other airport in India. So I don't really see it to be a bad thing. And of course, you've got that beautiful lounge in Delhi, which everyone can make use of.
All right, Mr. Devesh, if you're still there with us on the line, and if you heard Mr. Lazar, okay, I'm afraid we've lost the line there. But interesting there, Mr. Lazar, how there is this growing anger against airlines, particularly in the past year or so. We've seen that there have been long waits, delayed departures. And this perhaps just adds to it, given the fact that, as you also said, that this is not really a drastic move. It's just a 15-minute extension of the closure time. It's not a drastic move at all. But given this growing anger against airlines, passengers anyway seem to be of the opinion that the airlines aren't doing much, for the comfort of the passengers and for making sure that their travel is hassle-free, and just going on sort of increasing the prices, and which is why there seems to be this growing anger against airlines.
Well, Vedant, you have to take into consideration that India is now almost the third largest aviation market, okay, or will soon be. Our air traffic has been growing 15% literally year on year over the last 3-4 years. We are seeing Indians travel like never before, whether it's Air India, whether it's British Airways, Emirates, Indigo. You look all around and they're traveling, and more countries want market access. If airports and the structure of the civil aviation administration has not been able to keep pace, we've had the 95 immigration counters or the 14 baggage carousels for the last so many years.
But have the airlines been able to keep pace with it?
Well, airlines are operating at peak capacity. I mean, look at Indigo and Air India, the two big Indian airlines. They're desperate for new aircrafts. They're desperate to fly out. You've just seen Air India has introduced, a number of new sectors in the last 2 months to Toronto and various other places. Indigo has announced new routes to Southeast Asia. Of course, airlines have kept part. But if the infrastructure, if the gateway to exit into an aircraft is limited to your 20 or 40 or 60 counters or 60 security, go through a security check at 7 a.m. At T3 in the morning on a domestic sector and tell me if it takes you anything less than 20 minutes. You will be in queue for 20 minutes. Vedant, understand. So internationally also, if you go at 3 in the morning or 2 in the morning, when every long haul flight is departing to Europe, understand, they depart at that time to make Europe at daybreak. They depart at that time to make the US in the afternoon. So all airlines leave at that same time. It's a bunched up departure. So the only thing is that Air India, being the largest carrier, I'm assuming that they have just extended it by 15 minutes. It's not going to cost anybody anything more. It's probably going to eat into a little more travel time or eat into a little time, 15 minutes more that you'd probably come in early, but you wouldn't have to run through immigration, run through security, and you know that Delhi is one of the largest airports in India. The gates are almost 20 minutes away, the last gate, as a walk. It's for older people, it's hugely difficult. Air India has done this, as a convenience for people. Come in, I'll make sure that you're in and we'll close this. So you're always assured that you're in the queue for the immigration and security at least 75 minutes prior to departure. What does that mean? That means you've got 75 minutes to cross the threshold of immigration and reach the aircraft. Do your duty free, do whatever else you want. But at least you're out of that area.
Okay, as we try and patch more callers on the show, Mr. Laraz, very quickly also, there's a sense that airlines are more, increasingly becoming anti-passenger. In a sense, they don't necessarily take a pro-passenger approach, whether it's fares or otherwise. Why do you think that is?
Well, I do believe fares have gone up. Yes, there's no question about it. Let's also understand ATF and taxes have gone up in the last 3 to 4 years. We are seeing increasing burden on the airlines, yes. But we are seeing a huge burden on passengers. I myself traveled from Delhi to Pune, and I know, fare that was 4,000, I paid 9,000 for. So it pinches a great deal, one-way fare. So it pinches a great deal, and yes, there is angst amongst travelers because there seems to be no let-up. Understand that the government many years ago has disassociated, has deregulated airfares. Having deregulated airfares, then, you've got to then play with what's available. Unfortunately or fortunately, we have two dominant carriers and two smaller carriers in the country today that operate domestically. Internationally, we have a lot more carriers.
Okay.
These two airlines set the benchmark.
Yes.
Unfortunate.
Yes,
so
I agree with you.
It is.
But hold on to your thoughts there, Mr. Araz. Tanmay Ghosh is joining us from Dubai. Yes, Tanmay, go ahead. Tell us what you think about this. Tanmay, if you can hear me.
This
yes.
is Devesh Agarwal. I don't know if you're trying to reach me.
Go ahead, Devesh.
So, just in follow-up, thank you for reaching back to me. So, Sanjay knows, okay, yes, I do travel extensively, frequent flyer. I personally reach, even if I'm traveling business class, at least 2 hours before the flight, because it sometimes can take that much extra time at immigration, at customs. There are a lot more steps an international passenger has to go through before they get to the aircraft. And also, being a larger aircraft, airlines start boarding significantly earlier. A narrow body aircraft, they can board in less than, say, about 15-20 minutes. But, a 777 or a 787 will take a good 45 minutes to, load up, complete all the necessary paperwork, etc. And airlines want to, depart on time because, as Sanjay rightly pointed out, Delhi airport is so congested at that time of the night that, if they lose their takeoff slot, then they really have to wait for a long time. So I think if 75 minutes is absolutely nothing, I think passengers should typically reach at least 2 hours before their flight so that, they go through all their processes comfortably. That is my personal thoughts. And what Sanjay was saying about security, we are all paying a security fee, and so one has to question the government as to why more security personnel and infrastructure is not provided to cater to peak level traffics. Everybody, if they see on their ticket, there is a security fee on it. So if we are paying for it, we as passengers, we as consumers must demand from the government who's collecting this fee that they should provide us the required service at the levels of service that we deserve.
All right, Devesh, thanks very much for joining us. In fact, Devesh, you're rightly pointing out that infrastructure perhaps has to keep pace with the increased airport traffic. But as you said, it's responsible passenger behavior to reach on time. Apurva is also joining us from Delhi. Yes, Apurva, go ahead.
Hi, Vedant. Thanks very much for having me on the show. So, all of us know how hard airlines are getting these days. Even if you reach an hour before time, sometimes they tell you that the check-in counter has been closed. And that is a bit troublesome for passengers because we know that after check-in, we have to wait so much for boarding, then for security check-in, and all of that process gets done in 1 hour. But even then, right before boarding, we have to wait so much, and the boarding more often than not gets delayed for most airlines. So when we have to wait so much during boarding and so much after check-in, why would we want to come even earlier for check-in? So that is, I think, a bad move for all passengers who already spend so much time. People come for international flights, people come 3 to 4 hours before their departure time. So do you expect them to come in the morning for an evening flight? That's a bit bizarre to expect from passengers. So I do think that this is, and till now we were managing with the 60-minute timeline for most airlines. So I think that is manageable for the future as well. And as the point was being made, that it's an infrastructural problem. So the burden should not come on passengers. It should be on the airports and the airlines to build the infrastructure to be able to handle passengers in that much time.
All right, that's a very important point you're making, Apurva. Thanks very much for joining us. Given the fact that you already have delayed departures, why would a passenger want to come 75 minutes before the departure times? That's a very valid point there. Tanmay Ghosh is also joining us from Dubai. Yes, Tanmay, go ahead.
See, my pertinent problem, because I am a frequent flyer of Air India Express in general. It's an airline that I continue to fly every now and then. One thing I've noticed with them is that even if you reach 3 hours, that is the optimum time before the departure at the airport, they don't open the counters for check-in. So I don't really understand the point of calling people 3 hours before and then putting such timelines that 75 minutes before the flight, the counters will close. I mean, you're giving a very short duration for people to actually complete all the formalities. So I don't really get the point of it. Either you continue to do with the 60-minute prior to departure timeline, or you increase the time duration in which passengers can come and do the check-in.
Okay, again a very pertinent point there, Tanmay, that you're making, that despite passengers coming to airport well in advance, many a time we see how airlines don't open check-in counters. So that's an important point. Anil Deshpande is also joining us from Bengaluru, I believe. Anil, yes, go ahead.
Yes, Vedant, good evening. Just I wanted to say that it is very difficult to reach the airport well before the time, because especially like IT city capital Bengaluru, traffic is so much. In that condition, it is very difficult to reach, and spending 3-4 hours at airport, it is very most difficult situation for us, most difficult situation. And they have to reduce the time. Instead of 75, if they make it 60 minutes, that would be great help to the passengers like me, those who are traveling regularly. This is what I wanted to say.
Right, Anil Deshpande, thanks very much for joining us with your views there. Sanjay Lazar, would you like to weigh in on two important points that they made? One, that many a times we see that departures are delayed without any prior information. So why would a passenger want to come even earlier? And secondly, even when passengers arrive on time and well in advance, we see airlines don't opening check-in counters. So how would you address those two concerns? The valid points.
Yes, very valid points. And I'll address Tanmay Ghosh's point from Dubai first. He has an extremely valid point. He's talking about Air India Express. I'm assuming he's not talking about ex-Delhi. He's talking about some other station. But be that as it may, if an airline is now asking you, in this case Air India, from 60 to 75 minutes, I'm sure they will now open the counters much earlier as well. Instead of 2 hours before, which is typical, they'd probably open it 3 hours earlier. And I'm quite positive that they would do that in the places where they've extended it, that is Delhi. To answer the other lady's point, I forgot her name, but she says we come 60 minutes and then the flights get delayed. Understand the same way that a passenger takes to go through immigration and security and then clear, whether it's customs or no customs, and then go on to the aircraft. The airline takes time to collect your luggage and hundreds of other passengers' baggage. It goes down to a makeup area. It's checked for security. Then it's sorted out in containers. Then the baggage goes. So it's not a question of you could probably reach 15 minutes before and rush through. But can the airline ensure your bag will reach the aircraft? Can they fulfill all the requirements in that short period of time? The period of time they were asking before departure, the 60 minutes, was primarily to ensure that, the bags reach the makeup area, they're checked, they're secured, they're put in a container, the catering is done, everything is, loaded onto the aircraft. You can't have 40 passengers turn up 20 minutes before a flight and then expect the caterer to run with meals. There are a lot of, moving parts in an airline. For a departure to take place, there is a security departure section, there is an engineering requirement, there is seats, there's food. There's, everything comes into the picture, including baggage. So it's not so simple. 60 minutes is an international benchmark. Whether you went to Hong Kong, Sydney, or New York, most airports across the world would close their counters at 60 minutes before departure, barring for maybe first-class passengers.
Right.
Here, they've asked you 15 minutes more. 15 minutes, I can understand the person from Bengaluru but it's not yet extended to Bengaluru at the moment.
Yeah, and particularly
We
in
know
Delhi,
when
when it comes to the festive season, we see the kind of rush. So perhaps, one extra measure won't really hurt anyone. We'll continue to track this story on the other side of the break as well. Mr. Laraz, do stay on with us, and we, urge all of you to call us with your views, because this is really something that concerns all of us flyers. What do you really think about it? This extension of the deadline of the closure of the check-in counters. Air India's new diktat that check-in counters will close 75 minutes before the departure. What does it really mean for passengers? Is it the much needed caution that we need, given the fact that we see absolute chaos at airports, or is it nuisance for passengers? Now, this is limited to international flights and to the Delhi airport. We have callers joining in, and also our aviation expert Sanjay Lazar is with us as well. But Sunil Srivastav from Hyderabad is joining us. Yes, Mr. Srivastav, go ahead.
I just heard Sanjay mention a lot of process about the airlines. Why are the airports not being made accountable for efficient service? We are paying UDF, we are paying them fees. So airports are becoming bigger, but why are they not becoming more efficient? So why should the passengers suffer for the inefficiency of the airports? My question is that.
Would you like
so
to
what is happening? What is happening to the airports? Yes, airline wants to go through this process, so that's fine. But then the airports, they should pressurize the airports to make themselves more efficient today. With technology, I'm sure it's possible.
Sanjay Lazar, would you like to weigh in on this?
That was my opening remarks to you, Vedant.
Yes.
That this is the government, the airport, and the security, the BCAS, CISF, immigration. That's all controlled by outside agencies, the government. And they should step up to ensure passengers do not have inconvenience. They're taking, like Devesh, your previous caller had said, they're taking a UDF, they're taking a PSF, they're taking a security fee. Why should the passengers suffer? The airline is just trying to ensure that they don't lose the slot, that the passenger doesn't have to run to an aircraft or, desperately and ensure that. But, obviously the airlines may not be able to speak to the government as we are speaking on a channel, national channel. But Mr. Sunil is absolutely right. I support him 100%. I think every airport, the Ministry of Civil Aviation must look at this very carefully. If you've got so many flights bunched up, if you've got so many passengers, are your 60, 70, 80 immigration counters, 14 security counters, are they enough? No, they're not. Absolutely not. They're woefully inadequate. Because your traffic is growing. You've not grown in facilities, but you're taking money from the passenger. You're taking money from the airline. I completely agree with Mr. Sunil there.
That's right. In fact, as you said right at the outset, that it's the onus is very much on governments and airport authorities, and perhaps the Ministry of Civil Aviation should look at this very, very closely. But a lot of, as we were discussing earlier as well, Sanjay, a lot of anger on the part of the passengers. What is really the solution when it comes to this? Of course, the government and the airlines also need to work in tandem. But, the kind of chaos that we see at airports, some sort of very minor trigger, and, the entire operation sort of go out of gear, as we saw earlier as well, whether it's inclement weather or any other sort of technical glitch, it throws operations out of gear. What is the solution to make our airports more robust, particularly airports in our metropolitan cities?
Well, Vedant, the government and airport authorities are always great punching bags for everybody.
Right.
But
Sanjay, I'll just come back to you in a bit. Bharat Bhushan is joining us from Delhi. Bharat Bhushan, yes, go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me, please?
Loud and clear, go ahead.
Okay. See, I tell you, of late, we have seen the intervention of technology into the entry as well as the check-in process at the airport. Some airlines are doing it. You have the kiosk where you can check in yourself, go globally. You have the kiosk only. There are hardly any check-in counters. Then you have the automatic baggage handover counters where you can just do that. In India, if I try to web check-in into Air India for an international flight, they just do not accept it. They say, no, you have to come to the counter. I think there's a time that we should upgrade ourselves in technology instead of, asking for more time for the people to come in. Put some money in the technology, and I think we should do better with that.
All right, so that's an important point you're making, that we have seen, how processes have been made more seamless with the intervention of technology. So why can't this also be made more seamless? Vivek is also joining us from Hyderabad. Yes, Vivek, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, 15 minutes is not a big deal. I think we should make it, we should be on time. But unfortunately, in Delhi, I've traveled a lot from Delhi. The issue is 50% of the international passengers on Air India are transit passengers. Even the transit passengers are finding it tough to reach the gate. The CISF counters are less, the immigration counters are less. And 6 hours before the immigration test, the airline is not online. So you'll have to wait. So these things, the infrastructure we sorted out. Till such time, 15 minutes is okay, because on a wide-body aircraft, 20, 30 wheelchair passengers are there. So the entire immigration is crowded with wheelchairs. So how do we reach the aircraft? We have to literally run. So instead of that, 15 minutes is okay, I feel.
Okay.
Simultaneously, infrastructure has to be developed.
That's a very balanced and important point you're making, that while you as a passenger is willing to reach well in advance, the infrastructure must also parallelly develop. I think that's a very critical point. And the point you made about wheelchairs, while we talk about inclusivity, infrastructure also has to, in a sense, keep pace with it. Mr. Ranjan is joining us from Pune. Yes, Mr. Ranjan, go ahead.
Yes, my point is regarding the security checks. So now the infrastructure has been put in place. Many places, in many airports, I see that you have the modern facilities out there. But still the physical check is done despite going through the metal detector. And then when your bags are screened through the X-rays, I see that the CISF are not trained enough to check out that what is there in the bag. Last time I was traveling and I was, my bag was sidelined for further screening, and many other passengers the same thing happened. Now, they could see some keys in my bag. Now, was there a need to physically check what keys are those? There's no need. Now, if you go in comparison, if you go to Dubai, for example, I'm just taking an example. I'm not saying that they are better or we are worse, but the point is that millions of passengers pass through Dubai airports and they pass through seamlessly without any issues. So I think the security checks need to be faster, quicker, and you really don't need to have that physical check by a CISF person when you pass through a metal detector. The metal detector is a technology equipment which should work, saying that if it does not beep in whatever level, it should work. That's what I feel something should be changed in all our airports. And every airport I see that this is one of the major problems where people get stuck up and they really get hassled about it.
Interesting point there, Mr. Ranjan. Thanks very much for joining us. Sanjay, would you like to weigh in on that?
Yes.
Making our security checks more seamless, and perhaps our airport authorities and the staff also needs to be more equipped and perhaps more trained. That was a larger point that the caller was making.
No, and he was absolutely right. In fact, your caller before that as well was absolutely right. We are using antiquated security systems. We should have had full body scanners years ago. There was an order, supposed to have been placed at least 4 or 5 years ago, and it's still not arrived. We should stop using DFMDs, that's door frame detectors, or the sniffers. Full body scanners are all over the Western world today, and the passengers just walks through. As far as screening, I think we have very modern screening equipment, especially in a city like Delhi. That being said, we still need more manpower. We do not have enough security counters, like I said at the onset of your show, and we don't have enough of security islands to screen. If you take 8 or 10 minutes to clear security in Delhi, it's a very frustrating experience for a passenger. I fully empathize with Mr. Vinay, because I've also gone through the keys and the pen and maybe the headset, some little thing, and they open your bag and then it's a mess. So I fully agree. I think the government needs to step in. I want to respond to a point where I was interrupted earlier when we spoke of the government and airport authorities not doing enough. The ministry and the government, etc., are very often our favorite punching bag. Let's look at the US. Let's look at even Europe. Understand that disruption or black swan events or computer shutdowns or weather. We even saw Dubai airport getting submerged, a few months ago. We've seen, the Delta Airways outage across about 20 airports across the US. So it's not isolated. But there is a manner, we are the fastest growing aviation nation in the world today. Our airports are monopolies. We need to start getting more airports. So today you've got one company that runs an airport in Delhi and it's controlling all the growth. The government must say either ship up or ship out. Get somebody else to set up. I'm sure when Jewar comes up, you will see a lot of traffic diverted there. Things will ease up. But that's still 2 years away.
So that's an important point. And as we, start closing the debate, Mr. Lazar, we were talking earlier about solutions. We've seen at airports, these sort of constant altercations between, say, the CISS staff or, airline crew and the passengers. So the tempers are really high on all sides, really. So what really is a solution to make the entire process more seamless? I mean, nothing can be impeccable, but given the fact that our airports, particularly, say, in Delhi and other metropolitan cities, even the Bengaluru airport, the Mumbai airport, given the fact that the footfall is such, what really is the solution going forward?
Well, a couple of solutions. First of all, let me just say very clearly, it's unpardonable for a passenger, however frustrated and angry I understand they get, to raise their hands on any staff of any airline or the CISF. You raise your hand, you're in jail. Today the laws have changed in our country, and airlines restrain themselves from bringing unruly passenger, rules into play. But let's control our temper at airports. Understand all of these people are also doing their job, and they are struggling against the same inadequacies that you see. It's not that they're taking the security machine home and not letting the passenger go through. That's one point.
So that's the second point. Mr. Lazar, I'm afraid I'll have to interrupt you there. Ramesh from Mumbai is joining us. Yes, Ramesh, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Ramesh, I can hear you. Go ahead.
What you are showing 75 minutes before flight, this appears to be a bit difficult, particularly for senior citizens, that you expect them to be in time, but then they have to wait along sometimes when your arrangements are not pakka. And that is very painful. We're being at the airport without any support or help, without any other sort of assistance. It is very, 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 discouraging. You have to help out the passengers, make them comfortable, make them feel that they are really being looked after well, instead of making single-sided rules and imposing on people as if it is a diktat. This should not happen. My request is that you should consider the convenience of each age group in the society while they are making a travel.
Ramesh, thanks very much. Thanks very much for joining us with your opinion there. I think you're making a very valid point that perhaps airport authorities, also the airline crew and fellow passengers really need to be more empathetic, particularly towards senior citizens. Yes, Mr. Lazar, your closing remarks, and then we wrap up this discussion.
Yes, solutions are, I think government and airports and airlines must get together, increase the number of people, manpower, at security desks, at immigration counters. Let's have fast track counters. Number two is, don't allow bunching of slots, of departure slots. Spread them out a little bit more, and you'll find that, you will automatically ease this. But, I understand airlines all want to be on the 7 o'clock flight to Bombay or on the 8 o'clock flight to Bengaluru. So you see that bunching up happening. International flights, I'm sure they can spread it a bit. And I think it's time we need expansion. There is expansion, there needs growth, not only in new airports, greenfield airports, but also the current capacity needs to be assessed. That's it.
Thanks very much, Mr. Lazar, for being with us through the show, and thanks to all of you for calling us. You can also write to us or tweet to us as well, as we put the focus on issues that matter to people like you and me.